All right, thank you for tuning in to another episode of NBA Live Stream of Consciousness, rocking with you here on a Thursday. I took a couple days off to process the death of my Lakers. That's why I'm wearing, mostly black, man. It's a tough time. It's a tough time, and we're off to look for healing. Um, I'm gonna do a Lakers autopsy in a little bit, so I won't talk too much about it because there's a lot of teams who are actually in it to talk about. But let me talk about a couple of teams who are out of it. Start off with the Lakers. Obviously, a disappointed season. They probably are the biggest disappointment of all time. I don't think that's a hyperbolic statement. A lot of people, including myself, thought they could win the title. So to not make the playoffs is crazy. AD talked about injuries, and I do think injuries played a big part of it. But even when they didn't have injuries, they underwhelmed. But just because they underwhelmed when they didn't have injuries doesn't mean that they wouldn't have got better as the season progressed. You think about the Miami team when they put that team together. They were under 500, 8-9 for a minute, and then they got bounced back. That's LeBron in his prime, and obviously that was a title team. So, teams have started off the slow starts. Russell Westbrook has started off with slow starts at teams. So I don't think you can just offhandedly say they wouldn't have gotten better, but it's a disappointment that they didn't even make the playoffs. I expect them to clean house. Definitely a Westbrook trade. There's talks that Charlotte might be interested trading Hayward. I think that's interesting to get a player like Hayward and Rozier. You can make that money match, and those are two good players. You solve your point guard and a small forward position all in one stroke. They're players that could help out the team. They do need to figure out what to do with Nunn. Is he someone that they're going to keep around? Also, LeBron is getting older. He's 38 next year. He was an elite player this year. I think no one could really dispute that he was a top 5 guy this year, or top. I don't know. Top 10, whatever ish. But all things that go up must come down. What if next year is the season and he kind of falls off a cliff? That's what happened with Karl Malone and Gary Payton. One year they're 20-point scorers, and next year they're out there. One of them's out the league. So we got to see what end up happening with that as far as LeBron. I think trading AD is foolish. Trading LeBron is foolish. A lot of people are saying that they should blow the whole thing up and trade everybody. What were they doing before LeBron got there? The only reason they got LeBron was a stroke of luck. It's these NBA years feel like they move in dog years, so people forget things very quickly. But remember, people were laughing the Lakers out the building. No one was accepting even interviews, even meetings, pitch meetings to talk to the Lakers. So to think like, hey, I'm going to just move off LeBron and everything's going to be all swell. To me, that just sounds ridiculous. AD, the same thing. I mean, I think a lot of people are doing revisionist history. Oh, they traded too much for him, but AD at the time was held in the same esteem as Giannis. He was supposed to be this player that could easily hand off the keys and be going on his own MVP journey. Last year, he started off with higher odds than LeBron for MVP. And maybe this is, I don't know if this is the shape of things to come with him, or he's just a bad stretch where he's getting injured, but he hasn't particularly played well since he's played this year too. I think it all started with him kind of coming in big because he thought he was going to handle the center minutes, and he's just got to just play his game. So yeah, I think as far as the Lakers, I think that they're fine while LeBron is there, but just the bad management, them going cheap on the coach with Ty Lue. If you remember, Ty Lue was supposed to be the coach, and they went cheap on the number of years and the amount of dollars, and he balked at it. And he's down the street, they're down the locker room with the Clippers, and he's done a yeoman's job with the injured team all year. They went cheap, keeping Caruso. So there's just been a team that's been cutting corners and going cheap, and the Lakers can't be that type of team. So it'll be interesting to see what they end up doing. Shout out to my man, our dog. He's asked me to talk about the Pacers. Today it came out that Rick Carlisle said that he has no interest in being the GM and he came there to be the coach. They're actually in a really good position. They have a very young team, Halliburton. You have Turner, who's very excited to play with Halliburton. They're going to have a high pick this year. Hopefully it could be for them just the demographics of the state of Indiana. I think that a player like Chet Holmgren, if he ends up being a star, will be a great boon for them. And, I think he's from the Minnesota area. So he's, from about that area. So, staying in the Midwest, living in there would not be, the worst thing in the world to him. I think they've been rumored to be trading Brogdon and Buddy Hield, but I think the future is bright with them. Their owner had always been anti-tanking, and we play, and they've never really had a high lottery pick. I think the highest pick that they've had in a draft is like the number 8 or 9 pick. They just have been anti-tanking, but things kind of failed serendipitously for them this year. And then with their owner, he's been the type of owner that will tell the GMs what they can spend, not what the salary cap is, but like, hey, salary cap is 150. You can only spend 140. So putting a team in the Indiana Midwest market where it's going to be hard to attract star free agents, forcing them to spend underneath the cap, and then being anti-tanking so you never get a high pick, just leaves for a recipe for the team being what they are right now, which is middling, which they've been since the Paul George, Jodeci era, when they all him, Hibbert, and my man Lance Stevenson, took that photo like they were an R&B group. That was the high watermark for them, and that was back in my LeBron Miami era. So they haven't been really anything since then. But this is an opportunity. Hopefully, they get lucky in the draft. Any one of those kids, I think, could help them. The kid from Auburn and the kid from Duke. So you talk about the Kings. Shout out to my man Michael Walker Jr. I mean, I think they're a mess, but I do think that they found something with Mitchell being the primary ball handler. I think that they can find their identity. I mean, which means they have to trade Fox, which is going to be a hard thing to do because I don't think he's an above tier point guard. If you look at the point guard position, it's the deepest position in the league, and you would have to really squint your eyes to justify his salary, his lack of shooting, his lack of playmaking, put all those things together. So I do think that they need to try to trade him and just accept whatever the highest bidder is willing to give, and really put the ball in Davion's hands and kind of embrace a defensive identity. They're another team who the draft could really help them. You have Sabonis, but I don't think he's the reason for the season. He's not a reason to not draft or draft a guy. So I think that would be interesting as well for them to look at. Go back to the league currently. Boston's not playing their guys today. Seems like they're ducking Brooklyn, which it doesn't really make sense to me. Brooklyn's going through some struggles. Released James Johnson today. There was a video that somebody posted where KD was cursing at him, telling him to shut the fuck up and play ball, which is funny because James Johnson is known for his hands. He's a trained MMA fighter. So, but he hasn't played the last 2 games. I wouldn't be surprised if something popped off in the locker room and they were like, nah, get him out. So, but that being said, I mean, you saw them play versus the Knicks last night. I just don't know why anybody would still be scared of the Nets. They're a your turn, my turn team. I don't think they're getting anything coaching from Steve Nash. He's his answer to everything seems to be playing his top guys more minutes. No strategy, no scheme, no real identity on either side of the ball. So doesn't really make sense to me. So I don't know why teams would be scared of them, but Boston seems like they're punting today. On the West, I'm gonna say again, the Clippers, Norman Powell came back last night. He looked fantastic. They're the type of team that just leaks shit. It's just random. Like other teams, you hear, oh, this guy's ramping up. He's playing 5-on-5. I've been hearing, Zion and Lonzo Ball updates for weeks now, and then next thing you know, Norman Powell, who had a broken bone in his foot, is just playing. So I wouldn't be surprised if Kawhi plays. I think that's a tasty bet to win the West this year, and particularly the Western Conference is in flux. I have a series where I'm going to talk about the MVP and I think it's Joel Embiid. And one of the counterpoints is like, hey, look at the Nuggets record. It's similar to the Sixers record, and obviously the Nuggets didn't have their top 2 players all year. And I think obviously they didn't have Ben Simmons all year, so that kind of, I think it negates itself. But the statistical anomalies as far as record-wise in the NBA this year, 18-2 Memphis without Ja Morant. The Nuggets, what they've done record-wise without their top 2 players. And the Suns, clearly blowing past the field to win the most games. All those things have one thing in common. They all occurred in the Western Conference. The Western Conference is by far the weaker conference, in my personal opinion. So if Kawhi can come back and, he obviously takes his time. He's been out for, I think, obviously less than a month, but soon enough to be back in time to have a regular recovery and play. If he can come back, I think they definitely have a chance at the very least to win the West. And wouldn't that be crazy, the year that the Lakers don't make the playoffs, the Clippers would win the title? But I think they have a good chance. It's just besides the Sun, there's no team that they would look at and play. I'll be interested to see who they play in that playing game. If they get the Nuggets, I like them over the Nuggets. Minnesota has been scoring a lot, but I wouldn't be surprised if they won that game either. So that's something to look at. Just a lot of stuff going on in the NBA. Adam Silver talked about his guys missing games, and I think what you saw with Kyrie, he's been a full-time player now. So since he's become a full-time player, he hit that, those great games of 60 points, 50 points, they've kind of slowed down. And, the point has been made by a couple of different people. That's what happens if you can give players more time in between games to rest. They can have these fantastic games. So it might be a situation where Adam Silver looks at the schedule and he knocks it down from 82 games. It's going to be hard to convince the owners of that because they just see things as revenue, and we will have lost revenue if we do that. But I think the style of play and the type of play would improve. And, as a person who lives in the NBA city and who has thought about going to games but isn't sure if top guys are playing, it does kind of ruin the experience. So if you could spread games out, eliminate the back-to-back somehow, some way, I don't think you would have that problem. So Lakers coaching, I think Quinn Snyder, just briefly end on this. I think Utah is in deep trouble. It's not even trouble. It's just reality. It was nice while it lasted. Donovan Mitchell retiring in Utah, that was always a pipe dream. I think that they, after this offseason, if they get bounced early, which I expect they probably will, they got to definitely look into trading everybody and starting fresh. So, getting a package like from the Knicks, RJ Barrett and Quickly and Toppin for Donovan Mitchell. Would they consider it? Just, stuff in that vein, in that caliber. So I'll go ahead and leave it there. We'll be back on the regular schedule, going every day going forward. But, I had to take some days to process this Laker loss. It's tough. It's tough. A lot of people are dancing on LeBron's grave. Part of that is brought on by himself. Obviously, he had that slick tweet talking about people keeping the same energy. But, I guess the big story is this, this guy was, indestructible for a large part of his career. And now he's consistently missing games to injury. Is this the new normal? Or once again, was it just a bad stretch? So we'll see. All right. The game is the game. All right. That's it for this clip. Subscribe, leave a comment, respond to all the comments. The game is the game.
So what's up, man? What's up with you otherwise, The game is a game. Always.